Good afternoon. Today I'm going to give you a little glimpse of what I've always called my cottage garden, but I've noticed lately people are calling this type of arrangement a chaos garden. I think either word would fit, but I've always called it a cottage garden. So I'm going to try to tell you what the difference is, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to give you a reason or excuse to be more chaotic in your garden. Everything over there, all of that comfrey, all of that bee balm returned from last year. That poke plant, who's going to brag about that? He's causing me a lot of grief. He's all over my yard this year and that is actually goldenrod right next to it. But all of those things were here last year, and they returned. Now, if I'd gotten out here and just scrubbed my ground with a broom and an axe, I wouldn't have had these returned plants. In fact, right now I don't even know. These are some zinnias. I've planted some this year, but I don't know whether those returned from last year or they're from this year. It's a bit of mystery about a chaos garden or about a cottage garden. I coined the phrase, bloom where you want to grow. And that's true of a lot of the plants in a chaos garden. Even when I set out seeds, and I do set out seeds, the birds move the seeds around. That is scarlet runner bean, which I did plant this year. I love scarlet runner beans, and I love them to grow with my flowers because the flower of a scarlet runner bean is delightful. So chaotically, I just scatter them around my flowers, around places where things can grow. This is a maypop right here. Pretty soon, this should have purple passion flowers on it. And when it does, I'll tell you about a purple passion flower. But that I had one purple passion plant last year, and this year I have several. Now I'm going to show you something delightful. I showed you this yesterday. But I have beans growing on every support in my garden. This green Kentucky Wondergreen bean is growing amidst the Peggy Martin rose. Peggy Martin is a great rose because she doesn't really have any significant thorns, or maybe some little snags, but not thorns. Baby teeth, maybe. But so you can plant things that you're going to harvest to eat right next to a Peggy Martin rose and let them share the same support until Peggy gets so big that she no longer she'll shade out anything that you plant. All of those cucumbers back there, and I have tons of them, I had one cucumber plant last year, and I got to the end of the season. I didn't come out here and whisk away every sign of growth. In fact, I did nothing as my summer turned to winter. I just let it all sit where it was. Kind of a chaotic person, so it's no wonder that I grow a chaos garden. But now, this year, I don't even know how many cucumber plants I have growing. And there are cucumbers growing on the cucumber plants. I've already harvested a few. Lady in my church says she wants to make pickles. And I said, I'm up for that. I'll provide the cucumbers and you can teach me how to make pickles. That's one smaller one. The problem with me is that I often don't realize that there are any cucumbers growing until they're too big and too tough. But I'm spying these on this plant right here. And I'm about to have several little cucumbers here. Again, I have the cucumbers this year because I have a chaotic garden. I just let things go. This year I've added several new roses. Oh, all these tomato plants. Those are, I tell everybody the bird plants all these, and that's the truth. The birds, I have many, many, many birds in my yard. And the birds pick among the seeds and scatter them. And so the birds are the architects of my garden. I just give them a little bit of something to work with, and they make all the decisions for themselves. Now, I don't even know whether I can show you this wonderful thing back here. But do you see back there? There are at least 50 pumpkin plants back there. That was one pumpkin that in the fall, it actually was like a little early spring, I had left the pumpkin out on the front of my house, and it had gone bad. It had gotten mushy and the thing, and I asked my housekeeper to load the pumpkin in the wagon and to carry it around and just drop it. She did that, and now I have tons of pumpkins growing everywhere. My chaos garden is always full of sunflowers, and I've told you this before, but the birds plant my sunflowers. I keep a bird feeder going, or a couple of them going, and when the birds pick out the seed, they get some and they drop a bunch, and then all around that the bird feeders, I have tons of sunflowers, and they come early because I keep the feeders full during the winter. So what is the difference in a chaos garden and a cottage garden? Well, a cottage garden is a time-honored garden style. The peasants in Europe during probably the Middle Ages, it was right after the plague is what I've read. They felt the need to grow some herbs to fight the illness, that plague and other illness. So they created little herb gardens on their little spot of land. And as we all do, we want something beautiful. At least I do. I'm more into the beautiful than I am into the food. So they grew roses climbing up around those herbs. They used climbing roses almost invariably, and they used hollyhocks because they grow vertically, not requiring as much land as some things like zinnias, which do require a lot of land. But the way I plant them, it's really not so bad. I don't really plan. I sort of plan. I sort of pick out an area. toss the plant, toss the seeds. It's a parable in the Bible, the sower and the seed. Some falls to hard ground, some falls to soft ground and takes root, and some lands in the rocks, and that's the way I garden. I call it a cottage garden because my grandmother was a cottage gardener. But you can call it a chaos garden. In either case, I'm in favor of the creative chaos in a garden.